I hear you perfectly. So much is going on. What do you make of this Colin Kaepernick thing? I didn't even weigh in on it earlier. It's like the hottest talking point. It's kind of like we were talking about with Lockie last week. Is there anything here, for me, keep it in perspective, he sat his ass down. I can't really get on either side of this. What am I missing?
Yeah, I think he's got a First Amendment right to express his viewpoints on whatever, really. He obviously has an opinion on some of the things that have transpired with, the black community, young black men, and their interaction with the police. And he's free to express those opinions. And the issue I see, though, is it's a team sport. He's dragging his teammates into this fracas who didn't ask to be a part of it and might not share it, but now they have to wear it too. And I thought it was selfish in that regard.
Yeah, I hear you. And I'm pretty much staying out of it, Brian, because I really don't know. I'm looking at it going, look, I don't get to call you a civil rights hero because you sat your ass down. I also am not on board with this whole, let's burn him at the stake. And there's people burning his jerseys and making all these videos and they hate him. I'm not there either. He sat down. I'm just not. He sat down. That's just what happened.
Yeah, I used to get really upset about things like this, or even people, like, you go to a sporting event, they won't take their hat off for the national anthem. And, it used to really tick me off. And then I was like, that's the beauty of this country, that we are allowed to do things like that. But by the same token, I also have the freedom to consider you a complete fucking scumbag. So it works both ways.
Yeah,
so,
I fully agree. You can go either way you want with it.
Absolutely. So, Kaepernick can do whatever he wants. I was just talking to somebody today, and we were talking about Tim Tebow. And, why doesn't the Dallas Cowboys give Tim Tebow, and I'll give credit to Matt Ross, one of my colleagues. And Matt wanted to bring back Tim Tebow to play for the Dallas Cowboys. And I said, Matt, the problem with that is there are people who dislike Tim Tebow so much, and it causes such a circus, that you can't bring him in to play quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. You just can't do it. But you probably could bring in Colin Kaepernick. It's like this double standard. This one guy is vilified just because he's a good guy and people like him. And Kaepernick seems to be getting the benefit of the predictably liberal media that covers these sports.
Yeah. At the end of the day, he sat down. He probably, and we talked about this with Ryan Lockie last week, when you summed it up best by going, who cares? I defended Lockie a little bit. It was a bit of an indefendable position, but just a little bit, in that he certainly didn't know it was going to blow up into what it blew up into. He thought he was going to go cut a promo on the beach, maybe get a little bit of and that was going to be the end of it. He had no idea. I think that Kaepernick's probably in the same spot, right? He sat his ass down, whatever was going through his head, but boy, it sure turned into something.
No, it's a major thing. On the Hard Knocks series, Jeff Fisher, he's the coach of the Los Angeles Rams, and he's got something where he lines the guys up, after practice. I don't exactly know when it happens, but he said, hey, this is how we stand. You hold your helmet in your left hand, you put your right hand over your heart, and you look at the flag during the national anthem. So it's like it's part of the practice. So to me, he knew exactly what he was doing.
But you think he knew that the cameras were going to pick him up and single him out? And you think he knew there was going to be this big media wave? Because when he got to the locker room and they started interviewing him about it, it's the first time I've ever seen him. Now, I know a lot of people have, and I'm not super attached to the sport, but I did not recognize him. I certainly recognize the name, but I didn't recognize him. Right? All these football players, that's the hard thing about them becoming famous, is they're covered in gear. You don't know who the hell they are. It was the first time I'd ever seen the guy, and by the way he was speaking, he wasn't prepared for it. He didn't know this was going to be a media wave. This is in my opinion. He didn't know that he was going to be given this platform and need to express himself. What do you think of that?
It's possible, but he's a smart guy, so I just can't really believe that he didn't know somebody was going to pick up on it, because I don't follow him on Twitter, but from what I've read, he's kind of been very consistent with his messages about some of the police shootings that have been allegedly they're happening a lot. I don't know. I haven't really seen any data to suggest that it's any worse than it's ever been in history. I don't know. But apparently that has been of interest to him consistently on his social media, which I think that's where it should stay, or he should have a press conference away from the team. I think it just comes down to incredible selfishness, and it's kind of like this thing where the millennial generation that the older people are talking about, me, look at me, look at what I'm doing. I'm such a martyr. I'm great. And then you look at the martyrs or the people that stood for something. Muhammad Ali. A lot of people don't like to bring up the negative things, some of the negative opinions that he had about other races and such. But he's a guy who believed in something. He's a conscientious objector, and he went to jail. He lost 3 years of his prime. He paid the price. Colin Kaepernick this guy's terrible. He's a terrible football player. He had one good year, he turned it into $100 million. The guy can't play football no more. He's on his way out. He didn't really give up anything. This is just hey, look at me. I'm so important, and I'm such a trendy political type.
Yeah, I hear you on that. One thing that I love about when guys get asked questions right away when they're not ready for them is they don't have a chance to revise history. I'll tie this into fighting because we're getting a little heavy right now. I don't mean for it to go that way, but that was kind of his point. It's a pretty heavy topic. It's kind of tough to touch it without getting into some heavy dimensions, but I'll tie it into fighting real fast. George Foreman, at 49 or 50, they always called him 50, but I think he was actually 49 years old. He became the oldest heavyweight boxing champion ever. He knocked out Michael Moore. And when you asked Foreman about it to this day, he knew. He always says that. Well, I knew he was fading. I knew the whole time I could do this. I knew I could set him up for that. And Michael Moore, they'll cut to a screenshot interviewing Moore about it. Moore goes, I wish he'd just tell the truth and say he caught a lucky punch. Because that is what happened. He threw a punch, it hit me on the chin, and I went down. But I love that. I'll tie that into this. I love Rosa Parks. I always have because of her significance, because of what the whole thing was when she sat down on the bus. But they interviewed Rosa Parks one day when she was a much older lady. They went back, it was like 2 decades later, and they asked her about it. And she was so honest. And she said, I didn't mean for this to turn into anything. I was tired. I wasn't going to move because I was tired. And it was the coolest thing because she didn't rewrite history. She told this wonderful story that changed the world. So I like that Kaepernick got called on it right away.
Yeah, well, but I don't think he got called on it right away. Like, after the game, I'm not sure if anybody asked him about it, and it was social media that picked up on it. And then it became, I could be a little bit off on the details.
Yeah, I could be too. All right, here, let's just do that. Let's get off of it. My whole point was we did the same thing for Lockie last week. We talked about how it shouldn't turn into a story, then you and I perpetuated the story. But let's do this. I'm wondering who's going to win between Alistair Overeem and Stipe. And